If the animal's tail is already there, then why not just use it? The issue is far from straightforward. Typically sourced from China and Russia, where regulations are non-existent, even these standard practices were deeply unsettling. Complete lack of transparency is a red flag. Took me over 2 weeks of dedicated work, and I was genuinely shocked. Animal being hunted specifically for artist brushes. The representative clearly tells to the reseller to lie to the foreign buyers, and I quote, "Everything the Chinese told me turned out not to be true." Just the tip of the iceberg. This is not just my opinion. This is the same industry where natural hair for our brushes come from. How this is legal in the 21st century? For a long time, I wanted to make an in-depth comparison between the natural hair and the synthetic painting brushes. I began researching the topic to see what others had already covered, and I noticed one aspect that was systematically missing across all videos: the source of the hair and the ethical implications of it. This raised a question for me: why isn't anyone talking about this? My first logical step was to visit the websites of the popular brush making companies. To my surprise, I found absolutely no information. None of these websites had a single statement about animal welfare, let alone the source and origin of their animal hair. This complete lack of transparency, at least for me, is a red flag. To gain more insight, I wanted to reach out via email of the leading brush manufacturers in Europe and in the US. I was hoping to learn more about their resources and suppliers. I received no response from one company. 5 responded either by automatic email or without actually addressing my questions, and one provided at least some information about the region their hair comes from and some general statement about animal welfare. I will dive into that a bit later. I also searched online, reading scientific papers, blogs, and some forums. Some blogs were genuinely helpful. However, when it came to forums, I often felt like people were either guessing or confidently sharing what seemed like rumors or speculations. So this lack of information made me even more confused, and it took me over 2 weeks of dedicated work to gain a more in-depth overview of the industry, with plenty of ups and downs as I uncovered what is really going on. Before I dive in, I want to make a note here at the beginning. I am fully aware that almost every product that we buy has some environmental impact and often raises ethical concerns as well. Our supplies are no exceptions. When discussing brushes, it's important to acknowledge that environmental issues aren't limited to animal hair brushes. They also apply to synthetic ones. While I will touch on this a bit later in this video, I wanted to note this upfront. For this video, my focus will be on the animal hair brushes. So what we know for sure is that a wide variety of animals are used in the brush making, including the Kolinsky sable, squirrel, mongoose, badger, raccoon, rabbit, hog, pony, goat, fox, horse, and ox. The most popular among these are typically sourced from China and Russia. Animals with fur are found in the coldest regions of these countries, such as Siberia, where winter temperatures can drop to -30 to -40 degrees. This is also when animals like the Kolinsky sable and the squirrels are hunted. Interestingly, the Kolinsky sable isn't actually a sable. It's a type of weasel, also known as the Siberian weasel or Mustela sibirica. This species is quite widespread in the regions highlighted on the map. The Kolinsky sables are known to become aggressive, dangerous, and difficult to handle in captivity. If we can believe the sources, they are usually not farmed. Instead, hunters set spring-loaded or box traps in the forest, designed specifically to avoid damaging the animal's fur. The so-called body grip traps or conibear traps use metal jaws that are set open, ready to snap shut when triggered by the animal. While these traps are intended to kill the animal quickly by snapping on their neck, this outcome is far from guaranteed. If the trap isn't set perfectly, the animal can be injured in other areas like the shoulders, abdomen, or hips, leading to broken bones, fractured ribs, or damage to the spine, and internal injuries as well. This often results in a slow and agonizing death. Another common trapping method is a leg hold trap, designed to catch the animal by the leg without breaking the skin. Although the goal is to immobilize the animal, this method frequently leads to severe injuries like broken legs. As the animal struggles to escape the trap, that can cause extensive damage to the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, resulting in torn muscles, dislocated joints, and severe bruising. This inflicts, of course, extreme pain and can leave the animal unable to move properly. In desperation, some animals, especially raccoons, for other animals it's not that common, may even try to bite off their own legs to escape. Another common trapping method include snare traps, which use loops of steel wire. These are typically set to catch the animal around the neck. But they can also ensnare the animal by the abdomen or the leg if it's not set up properly. Once the noose tightens, the animal is left struggling, often suffering for hours or days with severe injuries. It is worth mentioning that these traps have no selection. Any animal that encounters it will get trapped and it will end up seriously injured or dead. But regardless of the type of trap used, the outcome is the same. Once these animals are caught, they are unable to move, they die slowly and painfully while enduring extreme suffering, fear, stress, and helplessness. If the animals, like the Kolinsky sable, are hunted in the cold regions of the world, they eventually freeze. Since the traps are checked only once a day or every other day, the animals are typically found frozen solid in grotesque positions. The trappers then thaw the dead animal overnight before cleaning the fur and skin them. Depending on the country and the animal, it's not uncommon for the carcass to be discarded as waste. While each country has its own regulations and guidelines for trapping animals, the enforcement is usually challenging, especially in remote areas like Siberia, but also parts of Canada and US and other places. Although some might consider trapping humane, based on everything I have read and learned over the past weeks, I have serious doubts about this method, and I am convinced that it often leads to a very painful and slow death for these animals. If you are interested in learning more, there is a free 3-part series on trapping on YouTube. Canadian experts discuss the topic in depth. It's without using any graphical footage.
There is a lot of secrecy behind the commercial fur trapping industry.
So this is really about as inhumane of a trap as you can get.
It's hard to beat, yeah.
And yet, completely legal.
Emphasized to make sure the trap is secured properly. Now, this wasn't set out of concern for any suffering the animal would be going through. Rather, it would be very bad for public relations if someone saw it.
It's called Trapped in the Past, and the link is in the description. It's worth mentioning that video footage of actually trapping the animal is extremely limited. It's almost non-existent on the internet. And for this reason, it leaves so much to our imagination. Our imagination that is often insufficient in these cases. In my experience, whenever I do see footage of an animal being killed or tortured, it's far worse than anything I had imagined based on the description. Watching such footage triggers intense physical and emotional reaction in most people. Your heart rate spikes, your stomach becomes upset, you might start to cry, and there is a strong urge to close your eyes so you don't have to witness the horrific acts. This reaction makes the situation feel real, leading to a deeper understanding of the suffering these animals go through. Reading or hearing about it, however, can never convey the same depth of understanding. No written description can truly capture the agony, fear, and the helplessness that these animals experience due to the complete lack of respect shown towards them. It was challenging to find documentaries or articles specifically focused on hunting the Kolinsky sable or the Siberian squirrels because they are considered less valuable in the fashion industry. However, I did find a wealth of material on the actual sable, which is highly prized in the fur industry, and its treatment is quite similar to these other animals. For instance, there is a BBC documentary called This World Inside the Billionaire's Wardrobe. This documentary shows a Siberian sable trapper and the fur farm also. For those interested in more details, of course, you will find the link below. And here it's also worth mentioning that you will find references to scientific publications, web articles, videos, and other materials that support everything I have discussed so far and will discuss in this video. Regarding those animals that are less frequently used for brushes, like raccoon, rabbit, fox, the evidence of their exploitation and suffering is very clear and it is well documented. Since I didn't receive many responses from the brush manufacturers, I can't definitely say that they don't use animal hair from those animals that are bred in farms, in fur farms. However, in this late 2017 video, there is a brief section from a lecture on artist brushes at the Klein Academy of Fine Art, where it's mentioned that if fur farm animals don't sit with you, you should choose synthetic, which for me strongly suggests that farmed animals are being used in the brush industry. When an animal is caught in the wild, its life is taken away in a painful and inhumane manner, but at least it had a life worth living before that. In contrast, animals raised on fur farms go through unimaginable suffering from birth until death. A quick Google search reveals the most horrific scenes imaginable, things that most of us wouldn't actually believe are real. And don't get me wrong, I am not talking about the exceptions. I am talking about the standard accepted practices. So frankly, I think those animals should have never been brought into existence. Conditions on fur farms are notoriously poor, with animals suffering and inhumane treatment being a typical pattern, even in countries like the US, Canada, and those within the EU where regulations are relatively strict. But in countries like China and Russia, from where most brush raw materials are sourced, the lack of regulation or the lack of their enforcement can lead to conditions that are beyond imaginable. The scale of animal farming for fur, including those for artist brushes, it's mind-blowing. About 80% of the world's fur is produced on farms, contributing to a $40 billion industry. This includes millions of raccoons, foxes, minks, sables, chinchillas, rabbits, and so on. Some might wonder, why am I even discussing animals that are not used for brushes? But my response is that even though the primary animals in this industry may not be those that are typically used for the brush, the fact remains that this is the same industry where natural hair for our brushes come from. I will describe the general conditions that these animals experience, and it's highly likely that a good amount of the hair for our brushes originate from such environments. So this industry profits either by selling rare fur to a niche market in smaller quantities or by operating large-scale farms that sell massive amount of fur.
This place is huge. It's so big. He's driving me to the other end because it's too far to walk.
So this shed and all of the sheds before it are absolutely huge. They go on forever.
There are many medium and large-sized fur farms, and even if they wanted to care for the animal, which I believe they don't, they simply couldn't due to the sheer scale of operations and the number of animals involved. To maximize the profit, and because of the high density of animals on these farms, they are kept in small, filthy wire cages. And these cages severely restrict the movement of the animals that naturally need to roam for kilometers each day. Instead of running, digging, swimming, or climbing, These animals can barely move, and they often exhibit clear signs of mental illness and extreme distress. The wire mesh floors on the cages cause damage and pain to their feet and other body parts, while piles of feces accumulate beneath them. As they are confined to cages barely larger than their own bodies, these animals exhibit stereotypical behaviors like repetitive circling, pacing, and head nodding. These are clear signs of their deep misery and helplessness in these unbearable conditions in which they have to spend their entire life. Self-mutation, cannibalism, infected wounds, and physical deformities are all too common due to the complete disregard for their well-being. It's no surprise that these animals suffer from severe mental illness. From the few minutes I have witnessed of their lives, I cannot imagine how any mammal could handle such conditions without losing their sanity. Yet they have no other choice. There is no escape for them.
Well, it's heartbreaking. It's in a tiny cage, no bigger than this, and it's just going up and down. It just really doesn't sit well with me at all.
Their deaths are equally inhumane. What I witnessed will stay with me forever, and I can't still comprehend how this is legal in the 21st century. These animals are forcefully grabbed and dragged from their cages. It's most probably the only time in their lives when they fight to stay inside, like desperately trying to hide or cling to anything to avoid being taken away. I mean, the terror in their eye is just unmistakable as they struggle frenetically to escape the grip of the wire choker or the hand that is dragging them out from their cages. After seeing these scenes, I have no doubt that these animals are terrified. Many places, particularly where regulations aren't strict, these animals are killed right in front of those who are still in their cages. Those animals who are left behind can smell the blood, hear the cries and the screams, and see the horror unfolding before them. This adds, of course, an unbearable psychological trauma to the already miserable existence. The animals after are often stunned or beaten to death, either by repeatedly striking them with an object or, in more horrific instances, by smashing them against the ground. In some places, it's considered humane to kill foxes and raccoon dogs by applying electric shocks from head to tail or anus to mouth. It's well documented that all the above mentioned methods frequently fail to kill the animal immediately, requiring multiple attempts. This has been exposed and documented in several countries, including China, Russia, Finland, Poland, Denmark, and the United States. Numerous videos show these badly done killing methods, capturing the animal, twisting in agony, and clearly conscious and suffering. In places where regulations are either non-existent or poorly enforced, workers are pressured to work quickly, often not taking the time to ensure that the animal is truly dead. There have been instances where workers, believing that the animal is dead, only realizes too late that it isn't. By that point, the skinning process has already begun, and the animal might regain consciousness while being skinned or even after being skinned. And I think that any of us would argue that being skinned alive is one of the most painful and most torturous experiences imaginable. Based on what I have seen in the past weeks, I have absolutely no doubt that these animals desperately want to escape, and I am certain that they feel pain and they suffer intensely. And just to be on the safe side, I must mention that this is not just my opinion. It's also heavily supported by scientific research. And you might be wondering that why am I bringing science up here? The reason is that there are still some people who don't believe that animals are conscious and sentient beings, who are capable of feeling happiness, joy, pain, and suffering.
In your view, is it just like these are sort of inanimate objects that you can do with as you please?
Yeah, they're basically philosophical zombies to me, I guess. Yeah.
Is that true of Every animal that isn't a human being. So like
I could,
chimpanzees,
yeah,
dolphins.
yes, yeah. I could imagine there might be some animal of different sophistication somewhere in the universe or an undiscovered one on the planet Earth. But insofar as animals on the planet go, yeah.
So wait, so it's about sophistication.
Over the past 2 weeks, I have watched many debates and discussions on this topic, and I was genuinely shocked by the level of ignorance that I have encountered. I am sorry if this comes across as harsh or rude, and I usually try to remain humble in any discussion. But when something is highly supported by broad consensus of scientists and backed up with solid evidence, I believe that it's essential to speak out and defend the truth, even if it challenges or disrupts other people's belief systems. Despite the extensive scientific research and evidence on animal sentience and even consciousness and self-awareness in many species, these facts are still not widely known as facts by some portion of the general public. Unfortunately, this lack of acceptance is also holding back the development and enforcement of laws that would genuinely protect animals. If you haven't heard yet about the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness, I have included a link below. This declaration is a significant statement intended for the general public, made by prominent international scientists from various fields, including cognitive neuroscience, neuropharmacology, neuroanatomy, and computational neuroscience. These scientists were looking for neurophysiological signals or pathways or genes that are present in humans and absent in other species that would enable us to be the only ones to have consciousness and deprive others from that experience. However, after extensive research, their data and observations overwhelmingly showed that we are not unique in this regard. In fact, the researchers independently concluded that humans and many non-human animals do not have fundamental differences in their possibility for conscious experiences. These findings shows the need to recognize and respect the sentience of other species, leaving behind outdated views that have long justified their exploitation and mistreatment. The scientific evidence on animal suffering and their capacity to feel pain is also overwhelming. Extensive research across different fields, including neuroscience and psychology, has consistently shown that animals are capable of experiencing emotions, pain, and suffering. Many animals possess the neurological and behavioral traits associated with these experiences, proving the reality of their sentience. For those interested in exploring this further, I have included links to several scientific articles in the description. Many people, including the brush manufacturers, argue that these animals are not killed specifically for the production of the brushes, but for the fashion industry, with the tail considered just a waste or a byproduct. This argument is also made regarding hog bristles or horsehair or other animal hairs, claiming that these materials are only byproduct from the meat industry or from animal labor. And in my opinion, this communication not only tries to shift and deny responsibility, but also assumes that using animal hair as a byproduct justifies or mitigates the ethical concerns of the animal's treatment and death. Because even if the brushes are not the primary reason and not the driving force for this industry, we cannot deny that accepting the use of byproducts, we may not only unintentionally support these exploitative industries, but we also contribute to the overall demand and the normalization of these inhumane practices. In the end of the day, the ethics of supporting industries that cause harm cannot be easily separated from the products they produce, regardless of whether those products are primary or secondary in nature. In my opinion, accepting byproducts from these practices is a comfortable ethical gray zone. At this point, I would also like to bring up two examples, the case of the badger and the case of the mongoose. In 2019, there was one of the many sudden peaks of public awareness about the horrific conditions and practices on badger farms in China. Badger hair was and is still used in shaving brushes, makeup brushes, and artist brushes. However, shocking footage showing the everyday life in these badger farms came to light, revealing extreme cruelty. In this footage, there is also a secretly recorded discussion between the investigator of this case, who was in incognito, I believe, as a reseller, and there was a discussion between him and the badger hair company representative. The representative clearly tells to the reseller to lie to the foreign buyers because they have animal protection organizations there. I came across many discussions in barber forums from that time and from other times as well, where people expressed their outrage, saying they will never use real hairbrushes again. In 2019, there was a massive response, and many brands and brush providers quickly removed animal hair products from their range. For instance, I found a video from the executive shaving company in which they announced that they would no longer sell badger brushes due to the pressure from individuals, customers, and organizations. The company's representative said, and I quote, "Everything the Chinese told me previously about how they farm their badger hair turned out not to be true." And then he explains how his suppliers completely misled him, claiming that the badgers were farmed primarily for their meat, with the hair being just a byproduct, which was not true. They also lied about the conditions in which the animals were kept, how they were treated, and how they were killed. Brutal footage of badgers being beaten by death with chair leg while crying out in pain shocked both the public and the manufacturers, who had been assured of strict animal welfare standards before. This realization led several major makeup and shaving brush manufacturers to stop using any animal hair, pushing them to develop alternatives that are now considered as good or even better than the original badger hair. While other companies promised better transparency in their supplies, so they could guarantee the customers that their sources really stick to high standards. This is why when an artist brush manufacturer claims that their supplies come from places with high animal welfare standards in China or Russia, I think they might actually believe it. I don't know, but I don't necessarily think that the brush makers want to deceive us, but I do question how much real information they are given by their supply chains. I am also not entirely convinced that they want to know every single detail about the source of the hair. Of course, in reality, I don't know this for certain, as there is a significant lack of transparency, and without open communication, I must emphasize that this is just my opinion and the speculation based on this case. However, one thing is clear: neither the manufacturers nor we should be too naive about these statements from the animal hair supply chain. I think it's important to ask questions and raise concerns if there is any doubt about the source. Then the other example is the mongoose. This example is very good to show the impact that our demand has. Our demand as the brush manufacturing, because some argue, as we know, that we are just using the byproduct, the waste of the fur industry, and this makes the torture of and the death of the animal less meaningless by making sure that more parts of the animal is utilized. They might claim that if the animal's tail is already there, then why not just use it, thinking that we have minimal impact with our brush demands, only taking the leftovers. However, the example of the mongoose illustrates the seriousness of an animal being hunted specifically for artist brushes. Unlike other animals whose hair might be considered a byproduct, the mongoose was hunted in India precisely because of the demand from paintbrush industry. A few decades ago, the hunting of mongooses for their hair led to a significant decline in their population across India. The impact was severe enough to disrupt ecosystems and place the mongoose at risk of being endangered. Recognizing this threat, the Indian government didn't respond by allowing large-scale farming of mongooses to meet this demand. Instead, they choose to protect and preserve the species in its natural habitat. The Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 was passed, making it illegal to hunt, capture, or trade certain animals. This included the mongoose as well and its fur. A strict law was made, but it didn't automatically mean that people stopped doing it. So, as the illegal trade of mongoose hair for paintbrushes became widespread with coming years, the government increased the focus on enforcement. They conducted raids, issued warnings, and seized illegal products and increased penalties, including longer prison sentences for those who caught violating the law. This illegal trade is currently still ongoing, but in a much less scale due to the large-scale raids in the past 10 years and awareness campaigns targeting both the public and the paintbrush companies. The mongoose example suggests that the brush makers using byproducts just happen to be the case, with only practical intentions behind it, because other than the tail of the animal is usually not used for brushes. So this became a convenient argument that doesn't really consider the broader impact. So I can imagine that if the artist brushes were the primary reason for hunting and fur farming, the production process wouldn't necessarily change. And what I am saying really is that we should not underestimate our demand that we create and the impact it has on the exploitation of animals. A final argument that I want to address, which frequently comes up in the forums that I've read, is the claim that animals like the Kolinsky or weasels or sables are killed anyway because they are considered pests. However, the issue is far from straightforward. While these animals might be seen as pests in places like the US or New Zealand, this is not really the case in Siberia. In fact, I came across publications suggesting that the situation is more nuanced. These animals are actually beneficial in controlling pest populations, although they can occasionally cause problems for farmers. But let's be clear, the primary reason these animals are killed is undeniably the demand for their fur, and not because they are pests. What I have discussed in this video is just the tip of the iceberg. I couldn't even begin to touch on the issue of the less used animals like foxes, wolves, raccoons, horses, and so on, or the hog bristles on pig farms in China, the region where most of the bristle brushes are believed to come from is called Chongqing. Researching this is incredibly challenging due to the large scale of this industry and the lack of transparency, again, in the supply chain. But based on what we do know, there are significant concerns not just about animal welfare, but also environmental, public health, and economic issues. Animal welfare concerns are, of course, present when it comes to intensive hog farming. Overcrowding, lack of access to the outdoors, and poor sanitary conditions can lead to significant stress and suffering for these animals. While the massive scale of these pig factories generates large amounts of wastewater, polluting both the air and the soil. Intensive pig farming has also been and continues to be a breeding ground for diseases. China, which consumes about half of the world's pork, faces considerable challenges in controlling and managing these diseases. For example, between 2018 and 2020, China lost about 100 million pigs to the deadly African swine fever. Additionally, the widespread use of antibiotics can contribute to the development of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, posing yet another threat to the public health. Although there are regulations in place, enforcement is often inconsistent. Again, not much information is available, but I can imagine that on small-scale farms, the hogs might be raised in better conditions and treated with more care. I don't know, but with the lack of information about the source, we simply don't know what we are buying. We simply don't know where our brushes are coming from. The problem is further compounded with the rise of large-scale industrial operations like the recently opened 26-story pig meat factory and other massive facilities which are rapidly overtaking small farms in China. As a result, the chances that our brushes come from animals raised in better conditions are less and less each year. Another thing I noticed while reading comments and discussions and forums in this topic is the tone of conversation. The treatment and consideration of animals is clearly a very emotional subject for many people. But what surprised me the most is that those who seem to be resistant to any change in the treatment of animals are often the ones who become aggressive or talk down to others. So I would like to ask everyone commenting below this video to please be kind to each other. It's perfectly fine to share your point of view. Please do it either in a neutral or a kind manner. This topic isn't necessarily black and white when it comes to our brushes, and we are still missing a lot of information. I think that searching for the truth is very important, but it's also difficult to be 100% right. And it's always beneficial to do your own research to have a better understanding. I also want to tell you that I have done my best to conduct in-depth research and to back up almost everything I have said with papers, articles, videos, and scientific publications. I have included many of these sources in the description. However, it's possible that I have made mistakes in this video or overlooked some important details. On the other hand, I also believe that this video helps to fill in some gaps that should have been addressed much earlier. Information on this topic has been scattered across the internet without much connection between the pieces, and I hope that in the end this video provides you with better and more comprehensive understanding of how the hair for the brushes is gathered. I of course also hope that this video will help to start discussions and raises awareness. If you find the content useful, please consider sharing the information or the video itself with your artist community. I plan to run some promotions to reach a wider audience who might be interested in this topic. In the end, I understand why people might avoid this subject. It's not just the lack of information or the heated debate surrounding it. There is also the fact that people have deeply different beliefs about animal welfare, animal rights, and what is considered humane. And going deeper into this issue can expose you to disturbing facts and videos that are difficult to process. Personally, I did not want to watch footages of animals being trapped and struggling to escape, or animals suffering from mental illness in tiny cages, or being tortured and killed. I want to mention that I watched several footages showing the routine, everyday treatment and killing of animals, not just the instances of extreme violence or misconduct. I wasn't searching for the most brutal or extreme cases, though I did come across some of those as well. What shocked me and revealed so much to me was that even these standard accepted practices were deeply unsettling. But I felt it was necessary to see these things with my own eyes so that I could make an informed decision. I believe that one reason people continue to buy fur or other such animal products is because they have never truly confronted the reality of the suffering involved, the scale of the industry, or the conditions these animals live in. The least I could do for these animals was to open my eyes and see what's really happening. If you care about this issue, don't look away. Witness for yourself what these animals go through, even if it's just once. Don't let trappers and fur farms and meat factories keep these practices hidden any longer. After that, you are free to make your own truly informed decision about how you want to proceed with your brushes. At the end of the day, no one can tell you what to do or what is right and wrong, and no one will force you to act or consume in a certain way. You have to decide that for yourself. For example, if you oppose animal cruelty, then using even byproducts from regions with poor welfare standards or from any source for that matter might feel inconsistent with your beliefs and ethical principles. In that case, you might choose to reject these products altogether simply because of the suffering involved in their production, and regardless of whether they are considered waste. On the other hand, if you don't have strong moral objections to using brushes made of animal products, even those from regions with lower standards, the practical benefits obviously outweigh the ethical concerns for you. As for me, it took some time to reach my final conclusion. I already own many animal hair brushes, some of which I haven't even used yet. The process of making this video and conducting research over the past 2 weeks has been emotionally challenging for me, and I have gone through various phases. At one point I thought I would never touch those brushes again. At another, I considered giving them away or even throwing them out. But after 2 weeks, I have settled on the decision that I will not buy any more animal hair brushes. However, I will use and take good care of those ones that I already have, hoping that they will last for a long time. In the end of the day, I am happy to have made this video addressing a topic that the artist community has been largely silent about for so long. I will also be creating a page on my website where you can access the emails I sent to the brush manufacturers along with the answer that they sent me. You will find this link in the video description within a few days after I publish this video. Feel free to use this email as a template if you want to reach out to your favorite brush producers for more information. I believe that the brush makers are doing an excellent job in developing better and better synthetic brushes. Some of these synthetic options perform remarkably well. I personally own a large range of synthetic brushes from my favorite company, Rosemary & Co. And I must say, their synthetics are outstanding. I purchased them about a year ago, spending around 300 euros on them. So I had the chance to try a variety of them, including the Ivory, the Evergreen, Red Dot, Eclipse, and the Golden Synthetics. For example, though, these are all synthetic brushes, and I think it's about time to make a video on these as well. As I mentioned it at the beginning of the video, synthetic brushes come with their own set of issues. Particularly environmental concerns due to the materials they are made of. As you know, these brushes are primarily made of plastic, meaning that their production relies on fossil fuels and involves the use of chemicals, which can be environmentally problematic, including pollution, and could indirectly harm wildlife. However, I think it's important to note that the most significant environmental impact comes from single-use plastic items like plastic packaging, bottles, bags, and textiles. If you are genuinely concerned about the environment and want to make a difference, focus on reducing your use of these single-use plastics. Be mindful of your consumption habits and, if possible, use microplastic filters in your household. That will have a much larger impact than avoiding synthetic brushes. Also, take good care of your brushes so they last as long as possible, and maybe recycling them will also be an option in the future. But believe me, these actions will contribute far more to reducing environmental harm than not buying synthetic brushes because of their plastic content. Artists always had an impact on society and culture in one way or another, but this influence comes with responsibility as well. We shouldn't underestimate the power that art has in shaping mindsets and reaching a wide audience. How we communicate, whether as an individual or through art, carries ethical and moral weight. Artistic expression and freedom are very important, but so is transparency. It's important to raise awareness not only within the artist community, but also among collectors and buyers. If you are against animal cruelty, you can use your art to spread the message or even mark your work as cruelty-free so people know what they are purchasing. Who knows, maybe some of your potential customers are trying to avoid animal products or anything linked to suffering and exploitation. Or maybe they love your pet portraits and wildlife paintings because they love animals. I think they deserve to know what are the materials that were used to create their favorite pieces. All in all, there are no magical paintbrushes or magical brush strokes that will suddenly turn someone into a great painter. You could own the best brush ever made in history, but it wouldn't make any difference if you wouldn't know how to use it or you wouldn't have the skills for it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I truly believe that having great art supplies and good brushes are crucial. But what truly matters in art is that it has soul and it's authentic. Great art comes from practice and experience. You create it with your own hand, your mind, and your heart. Use whatever tools you prefer, but if those elements are missing, then no tool will ever fill that gap.